Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me again. Just something's come across my desk or on my computer that I thought I'd best share with you. Haven't had much time to think about it just at the moment, but it does take some critical analysis, I think, to understand exactly what is happening here. Apparently, the Australian Human Rights Commission, a body which is designed to represent the rights of human beings, particularly Australians, came into play when they were given permission, apparently, to present before the High Court their arguments in relation to the human rights of those that were detained. Now, apparently, as you'll find out in this Sky News report, that the Liberal Party, when in government, chose or told the Human Rights Commission that they weren't to be involved. In other words, as far as I can tell, they decided that the people that were in detention didn't have either any human rights or it wasn't appropriate that they be represented by the very body that looks after, that governs, not governs, but does advocate for the human rights of people, and particularly, I guess, Australians. Now, we could argue these people weren't Australian citizens, this had nothing to do with them, but the Human Rights Commission is an international body. We have a commission here in Australia that specifically deals with the rights of those people that are living in Australia, whether detainees or not. And they presented to the High Court. And the argument that I think Sky News are trying to make, number one, is that Dreyfus allowed this to happen. So the Labor government agreed that this was probably a good thing that should happen. And as opposed to the position that the Liberal Party had taken previously, where they just didn't want people to have human rights at all. So I'm going to play some of that clip for you so that you can make up your mind as to whether or not this was an appropriate decision by Dreyfus, and whether you think that people should have their rights upheld regardless of who they are, remembering that many of the people that we're talking about here that have been released, the majority of them, the vast majority of them, don't have criminal history. They just couldn't find a country to which they could be or should be or whatever returned. So let me know what you think about this in the comments below.
Also got some more information as it tends to drip out in these sorts of matters on what the government did do as this was being put to the High Court, that original case.
That's right, Kieran. There's been an extraordinary revelation in documents released to the Senate in terms of government actions in relation to the release of the detainees. The Attorney General, Mark Dreyfus, in June allowed his agency, the Australian Human Rights Commission, to intervene in the High Court case on behalf of the pedophile seeking release and against the concept of indefinite detention. And the documents reveal that former Attorneys General Christian Porter and Micaiah Cash, in similar test cases on indefinite detention, refused.
Now, Porter and Cash are two of the most obnoxious individuals on this planet. And particularly when you look at Porter's history and the reason why he had to leave government, and also his involvement with the robo-debt, you wonder what moral background or these people particularly have in relation to be able to assess anybody's human rights, and clearly very little. So let's carry on with the discussion.
Used the Human Rights Commission doing that. This begins when the Human Rights Commission President, Rosalind Croucher, wrote to Mr Dreyfus on May 22nd. The letter, which has been tabled, argues for the Human Rights Commission to be involved in the case, says the decision is controversial from a human rights perspective because of the potential it creates for arbitrary and indefinite detention, contrary to Article 9 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The Commission has formed the view that this proceeding meets its intervention guidelines. The proceeding involves an intervention issue because it deals with the right to liberty and, in particular, freedom from arbitrary detention. The resolution of this issue, it says, will have implications for people who've been kept in immigration detention for prolonged periods, not just the plaintiff. The letter then mentions Christian Porter refusing a similar request from the Commission. It says, in a letter to me on 4th of January 2019, Christian Porter raised the concern that if leave were granted, the Commission may argue positions on constitutional issues that may diverge from the Commonwealth's general position. That won't assist the court, he said. Then it goes on 4th of March 2022, the former Attorney General Michaela Cash refused the approval sought by the Commission, similar approval they were after. But in this case, Mark Dreyfus lets them get on the side of the detainees. On June 5, Mr Dreyfus writes back to the Commission, I approve the AHRC undertaking constitutional law work in the High Court in the NZYQ matter on the following condition. A, the AHRC must make clear in any submissions that their submissions and not on behalf of the Commonwealth. So that letter was sent on June 5. That was the date that High Court Justice Gleeson made comments in the court which indicated the detainee may have a good case.
Now, I just want to say that I don't think that this necessarily means that the government was saying that this was going to change the outcome of this particular case. In fact, at the end, I think they say here that they didn't think that was, they're not making that assumption. Fair enough. And neither we should. But what we should consider is the right for individuals to be able to put forward a case based on their own personal individual human rights, and not to allow the Australian Human Rights Commission to get involved, I think, shows a bias that the government have, which is inappropriate and which actually says to other individuals, well, in this situation, in this government, under the detention system we have, you simply don't have any rights. So I believe that what Dreyfus did in this case, by making sure that the Australian Human Rights Commission was actually involved and were able to put forward a case, that was beneficial to the general arguments around people's human rights. Now, there's no evidence to say that the court took that on board and that swayed them in their decision. There's no evidence to suggest that. But what the Sky News are trying to do now is besmirk Dreyfus and the Labor Party because they took this different approach, that they therefore were siding with the detainees. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. They were just doing what was the right thing to do from a human rights perspective to ensure that these people were represented appropriately. So please subscribe, ring the channel, ring the bell, whatever, do your thing. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. This is just out today. It's relatively new, and it's a new way of looking at what the government has chosen to do. You may agree with it. I think it was a good thing to do. The question we need to be asking is, why did Michaela Cash and Porter choose to do something completely different when they were in power? I think because they're not actually interested in human rights at all. Far from it. Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and ensure that you and the people that you love are safe.